What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit the like button and let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or you're living under a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another Sit Down video. Also, make sure you hit the notification bell so you always be notified the next time I drop a future Sit Down video. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into another very interesting organized crime topic. And 2 nights ago, I went to one of my favorite restaurants in my town. As always, it's an Italian restaurant, and I had one of my favorites, veal cutlet parmesan and rigatoni. And it got me thinking. There are very few things that go better together than the mafia and food. Over the years, we've seen countless mobsters own restaurants, pizzerias, and other food businesses. We also know of some very interesting things mobsters enjoyed eating. Today, we're going to get into some of the more infamous ones, stories you may have heard, and some food stories you may not have heard. The stories of mobsters and their food next on Sit Down Shorts. In 1980, Philadelphia was one of the most popular and powerful mob cities in America. The boss at the time, Angelo Bruno, ruled with an iron fist, but he was also someone that was old world. At one point, he would be called the Quiet Don due to his ability to make money and not headlines. However, the problem by 1980 was the troops were getting irritated. Many of Bruno's men weren't making much money, and they watched their very powerful boss make plenty of it. At some point, certain folks decided it was time for Bruno to go. In March of 1980, he would be killed in front of his home in the area of 934 Snyder Avenue in South Philadelphia. Interestingly enough, before his cruel demise, Angelo Bruno would actually chow down on a quite nice meal at a restaurant called Cuz's Little Italy in South Philadelphia. Now, if you read the backstory of Cuz's Little Italy, it was actually at one point owned by the wife of Philadelphia mobster Tommy Del Giorno. Now, at Bruno's final meal, he would chow down on chicken Sicilian with rigatoni. On Halloween night, 1989, Philadelphia mobster Nicky Scarfo Jr., son of Philly mob boss Nicky Scarfo Sr., was chowing down on one of his favorite meals, spaghetti and clams, at the very popular Dante and Luigi's restaurant in South Philadelphia. Upon the completion of his meal, Scarfo will be shot multiple times by a MAC-10 weapon. He would survive as none of his vital organs were hit. The person that shot Nicky Scarfo has never been identified. In Chicago, we all know who this guy is. One of the most recognizable faces in the history of the American mob is Al Capone. Now, Al Capone, as a young man, was always, from what I understand, a very good athlete. At one time, even being a semi-pro baseball player. Now, as Al Capone got older, he began to be a bit plumper. And one of the things he enjoyed eating most was spaghetti. But it was interesting. He didn't like the traditional type of sauce. Many times when you eat spaghetti, it's maybe with a white clam sauce or a traditional tomato gravy. In Al Capone's case, he actually enjoyed eating spaghetti with a very interesting, creamy, cheesy walnut sauce. He would make the popular sauce in a white walnut base with cheese, and was said to be very creamy and full of flavor. Down the road, Al Capone, they would actually find a written note showing the recipe of the walnut sauce. Now, it's something that today is consumed more frequently, and it was something that Capone enjoyed eating a lot. Mickey Cohen, at one point, was an enforcer in the Chicago outfit, and by the early 40s, he would move out to the glitzy, glammy town of Los Angeles. During the life of Mickey Cohen, it was said that he enjoyed going to a restaurant called Cole's, still operating today in Los Angeles. One of his favorite dishes that he enjoyed eating was a French dip, something that the restaurant is famous for. We have to admit, one of the best things you can eat is a sandwich with a cold beer. We have to admit, we can understand why by this picture. Cole's is known for their French dip. I mean, look at that beautiful sandwich with some tater tots and a speared pickle. It might go good with a great beer or a great mixed drink. Popular YouTuber and former Chicago outfit mobster Frank Culotta talked about all sorts of things on his show, Coffee and Culotta, until his death several years ago. One of the things he would talk about in interviews and his own YouTube show was the fact that growing up, he ran around with Chicago outfit heavyweight and lunatic Tony Spilotro. Now, early in both Culotta and Spilotro's life, it was well known that Spilotro's father, Patsy, actually owned a restaurant called Patsy's on Grand Avenue in Chicago. According to Culotta, many local outfit members in that area very much enjoyed Patsy's meatball sub. According to Culotta, it was one of the best in the city, and mobsters regularly enjoyed eating it. I would also learn from popular Mafia historian Scott Bernstein that Paul the Waiter Rica allegedly got his name, the Waiter, from being a waiter inside Patsy's restaurant on Grand Avenue. Now, down the road, Rica, upon his arrival from Italy, would not only work at Patsy's, but he would work at other restaurants where he would gain the nickname. Paul the Waiter down the road would become one of the most powerful bosses in the history of Chicago. Sam Giancana, upon his demise in the 60s, would actually gain infamy for what he was cooking when he was killed that night. Mooney Giancana was actually cooking sausage and pepper sandwiches in the basement of his home in Chicago. He would be killed as they roasted on the stove. In New York, food was no different. In the case of popular movie actor now, Joe Dogs Iannuzzi, he was actually somewhat of a mob chef. Now, this is Joe Dogs in this picture, disguised during a movie that he acted in, explaining his life on HBO many years ago. But Joe Dogs actually, from what I understand, was a pretty damn good cook. According to a book he wrote called the Mafia Cookbook, revised and expanded, he would talk about one dish that he enjoyed cooking and was one of his favorites, shrimp scampi. It was said that Joe Dogs was one of the best cooks in mob history. And obviously, as we know, it was said that Tommy Agro, one of his mentors, really enjoyed eating shrimp scampi. Now, one of the most famous places mob enthusiasts remember when it comes to the Gambino crime family is the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club. And from what I understand, every Saturday night, mobsters would enjoy pasta and sausage, generally cooked up by Skinny Dom Pizzonia, a made man currently in the Gambino crime family. It was said Skinny Dom couldn't read, but he could really cook. And it was said that he made a terrific tomato sauce that many mobsters would actually take home after the Saturday night pasta and sausage dinners. Interestingly enough, in the late 1980s, Gambino hitman Bobby Borriello would be killed in the driveway of his home in Brooklyn. It was said that when he was found, a pasta jar of sauce was found next to his body. And that was said to have come from the tomato sauce at the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club's weekly sausage and pasta dinners. John Gotti is one of the most recognizable faces in the history of the American Mafia, and we cannot leave him off this lofty list. During a prison conversation with his brother Peter, John Gotti would talk about one of his favorite things to eat, eggplant rollatini. Now, in a previous video discussed here, I talked about many prison conversations involving John Gotti and his brother. In that conversation about eggplant rollatini, he would also say that at one point, One of the mobsters in the family, Joe Armone, a small individual, quite petite guy, said could eat 6 or 7 if he wasn't careful. Gotti would also discuss that he really enjoyed eggplant rollatini. Now, eggplant was a common theme in the Gambino crime family. It was said that Mikey Scars Di Leonardo very much enjoyed eggplant as well. But according to Michael himself, he would say, though, you can only eat eggplant one way, Sicilian style. And if you know anything about Sicilian style eggplant, there is no eggplant. There's no breadcrumbs on the eggplant. And that's the difference between the Sicilian version to any other version. Mikey Scars and John Gotti had one common characteristic. They definitely loved their eggplant, whether it was Parmesan or maybe even in a sandwich. I would also learn some interesting news about the Gambino family as well. According to multiple stories, it was said that Jackie knows D'Amico, a bon vivant who is very much in constant contact with John Gotti and seen in many photos and videos of Gotti. It was said that during Gotti's prison stay, John D'Amico would allegedly smuggle a bruschetta wrapped up in socks into prison. At one point, Gotti would tell Mr. D'Amico that he shouldn't do it, that he was going to get himself in trouble, but he would say, D'Amico, that he couldn't eat himself on the street, knowing that Gotti wasn't able to enjoy the same delicacies that he did when they were on the street. There's one thing we can say about Jackie Knows D'Amico. He was always particularly loyal to John Gotti. And from what I understand, you can't make friends like John D'Amico. Was he the greatest of mobsters? Probably not. But there's one thing we can know about him. He was a great friend, for sure. It was said as well that not only was the bruschetta wrapped in foil, but he would put those bruschettas in different socks and things, and that's how he would get it in to the prison. In a popular cookbook written by Renee Graziano and her sisters called How to Use a Meat Cleaver, Miss Graziano would detail that her father, Bonanno Capo, Anthony TG Graziano's favorite meal was the very simple penny alla vodka. Joey Messino was a mob heavyweight and a boss that really took the Bonanno family into the 20th century. As we know, though, Messino actually got his start running lunch truck wagons and ultimately owning a restaurant called Casablanca. From what I gathered, according to Frank Fiordolino, a man that knew Joey Messino, he would say that Messino's favorite dish was pasta with white clam sauce. Vito Grimaldi was a Bonanno capo and regularly was seen in and around Ridgewood and other parts of Queens. It was said that Vito Grimaldi, though, went a different way in enjoying one of his favorite meals, hot dogs. It was said that Vito Grimaldi was regularly seen at a cart and restaurant called Lucy's on Woodhaven Boulevard in Queens, devouring some summer hot dogs. Vito Guzzo was a violent individual who belonged to a violent crew in Queens called the Giannini crew. He would ultimately have said to got his button in prison in the Colombo crime family. It was said Vito Guzzo loved pizza, and one of his favorite pizza restaurants was Rosa's in Middle Village. We've actually seen Rosa's in the popular television show on HBO, Billions, where they film various scenes involving the character that the show's about, Bobby Axelrod. John Senni Franzese is one of the most recognizable figures in the history of the mob, and up until his death several years ago, it was said that one of his favorite dishes was pasta fagioli. One of the best pasta fagiolis in the city of New York was said to be found at the restaurant of Genovese heavyweight Tough Tony Federici. And it was said that Federici and Franzese would be seen regularly talking to each other as Franzese enjoyed Federici's pasta fagioli. It's a very interesting peasant dish, but up until the end, it was said that Franzese loved this dish. Now, the mob just didn't love entrees, they also loved desserts. According to many, and someone I talked to, RJ Roger, he would tell me that he had read at one point that Carlo Gambino loved to chow down on cannolis from the very popular restaurant and bakery Ferrara's in New York. Today, you could actually get Ferrara's cannolis shipped to you anywhere in America. That's how famous they are now. I wanted to end this with something very interesting. Lately, I've been doing a lot of reading into Mexican drug cartels, one of which is based out of Michoacan in southern Mexico. It is a cartel called the Knights Templar, Caballeros Templarios. At one point, it was run by this individual. They called him La Tuta. At one point, La Tuta, aka the teacher, did just that. He was a teacher. Ultimately, though, he had become the head of Michoacan's Knights Templarios cartel. Now, I'm telling you this because Mr. La Tuta would actually be arrested and is doing essentially a life sentence in a Mexican federal prison. After it was said that during his 49th birthday, he would send his wife out to a local bakery to pick up a very famous chocolate cake he enjoyed eating. It was said that that's exactly where the Mexican federales would pinpoint La Tuta. After years of being on the run, he would subsequently be arrested. The chocolate cake was still in the fridge when he was arrested. Mobsters over the years, gangsters over the years, drug bosses over the years have to eat. It's something we all have to do. I felt going a different way in this video was important. We talk all the time about biographies and other interesting things about the mob, but we all eat. And there's one thing we all love to eat, and that's Italian food, pizza, ravioli, chicken parm. But I thought it's important to kind of go over some of the mob's favorite foods. Who did I miss? Let me know what your favorite mobster or mobster history that you like to look into. What did they like to eat? What didn't we get into today? Drop that in the comments below. We'll see you next week here on The Sit Down.